snow days. Because see, now I can look around the congregation this morning, and with the weather so terrible, and look at who made it in on such a nasty day, and I can tell who's really committed to the Lord. And I can look at those people that stayed home where it was safe, and they didn't risk their lives to get out on the highway, and I can tell who's really smart. And now I know both. And this is good because we know the Lord uses both. Lady went to call her friend one time. And she called her friend's house. And when the phone was answered, it was her friend's little 5-year-old girl. And the little girl went, "Hello?" And the lady said, "Can I talk to your mother?" The little girl said, "No, she's busy. She's talking to the policeman." Concerned, the lady said, "Well then, could I speak to your father?" And the little girl said, "No, he's helping the firemen." Now really worried, the lady, obviously not being able to talk to either of the parents, decided she'd just ask the little girl, "What's going on there? What are the police and the fire doing there?" And the little girl answered, "They're looking for me." Now, if you're a parent, how many of you have ever, at least just for a moment, lost your kid? Panic time. We all freak out a little bit, and we understand that, and we go to great lengths to help find missing children. Today I've got an alert system on my phone. If the state of Missouri issues an Amber Alert, I get a notice with all the information on my phone, so that I can help look for the lost kid. We go to extremes. And a lot of you guys are farmers or grew up on farms, and when y'all go out to look at your cows, you go out and you do what? You count them, and if you're supposed to have 100 cows and you come up with 99, what do? You go look for the one that's missing. You try and find the one that's not there. If you come up with 100, you go back to the house and eat a sandwich. You know, you don't sweat it too much. But if there's one that's missing, if there's one that's lost, we look for them. We hunt them down. We try and find them. And that's important. And Jesus recognized that. And in Matthew chapter 18, he tells this story, this parable. He says, "What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep, and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that wandered off? And if he finds it, I tell you the truth, he's happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. And the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of the little ones should be lost." Now I'm going to do something a little different today. We're not going to have a PowerPoint today because this really isn't a teaching message. I want to have more of a heart-to-heart talk with you. And so we're going to change a few things up. One thing is that we're not going to have a PowerPoint. The other thing is, I don't feel like with the message I'm going to deliver, especially with what my first point is today, that this is one that I can stand up here and preach. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and chat with you. And change kind of the dynamics here a little bit and see how this works today. And the reason I'm doing this is because the first thing I want to talk to you about is what this verse means to me. And if I had to title the first point of my sermon today, it'd be confession. When we started this congregation here, the heritage of this congregation comes out of a background where we were told by other churches that we were the wrong kind of people. We were told that we were trying to reach the wrong kind of people. And so a bunch of us that were the wrong kind of people got together and decided to start a church to try and reach the wrong kind of people. And so our focus as a brotherhood, as a body, was seeking the lost. And that's where we come from. And honestly, when we founded this congregation and we began to worship together and we began to extend grace to each other and to the lost, and we began to serve Christ by seeking the lost, as he talks about here, that has been one of the most thrilling times. It was difficult, but it was one of the most thrilling times in my life as far as ministry is concerned. Recently, we've started losing numbers. We've started losing people. And there's been a struggle that's gone on in my own And I blame seminary, honestly, for some of it. There's a lot of ideas out there about how you need to establish the vision for your congregation. And if people aren't on board with the vision, just let them go. And there is a little validity in that. But I think I personally took that and used it as kind of a cop-out. The attitude that Jesus has here is totally different. And my attitude was, once I find a sheep, it's found. And so I don't have to go seek that sheep again. But that's not how sheep work. In fact, from my understanding, I haven't done a whole lot of ranching or shepherding, but farmers, correct me if I'm wrong, if you've got a cow that's missing today and next week you have another cow that's missing, what are the odds it's the same stupid cow? Isn't that typically how it works? And so we end up searching for the same stupid cow over and over again. But what happens with our attitude when it's people? We maybe get them in the church, or we reach out to them, we seek them one time, and then they get lost, and we just kind of go, well, they're lost. I say we. I'm tempted to do that. My patience runs thin. I feel like I've already reached out and searched for you and worked to bring you to Christ, and now I kind of expect you to act more like a shepherd than like a lost person, like a lost sheep. And so before I can preach this message, before I can teach this, I need to confess to you that I have struggled with living this. Because I don't like doing the same thing over and over again. I like new stuff. I like reaching out to new people. And the tough work of shepherding God's flock with sheep that go missing again has been a challenge for me. And so as I've been struggling the last several months, and I've talked to Steve and Bob and Gary a little bit about what are we doing wrong, what do we need to fix, I finally came to the conclusion when I was reading this week that one of the things I'm doing wrong is I'm expecting sheep to stay found once they're found. And I'm not looking for them when they go lost again. And so I just wanted to confess that to you and share that with you and ask you to pray that I'll have the strength and the patience to seek the lost sheep that were found and gone missing again. Now, what does it mean for us as a church? I think one of the biggest things this means is we have to watch our attitude. I actually entitled this sermon, Very Important People, VIPs. And this comes right after the section where Jesus talks about the greatest in the kingdom of heaven is the servant. And I think here we see the most important person in the kingdom of heaven is the lost. Not that they're really even in the kingdom yet, but they're the ones we're trying to reach. And I think it's interesting, a couple of mistakes the church has made in this area. One of the mistakes I think we see that the church has made is we've gotten away from the term lost. You go to a lot of churches, you go to church conferences today, they don't like to use the word lost because lost seems somehow demeaning. Lost seems like it puts a separation between them and us. And there's all kinds of psychobabble reasons that people say you shouldn't use lost. But there's one thing that they kind of miss out on, and that's that Jesus uses the word lost. And it avoids the reality that people are lost. They don't know where they are. They don't know where they're going. They don't know how to get there. And they're going to have problems. They've got problems. And they're not going to find themselves. So I think lost is a good term. I think it's better than terms like unchurched, which designates people who don't go to church. So I think we need to get back to using the biblical term lost. Well, and if they're lost, then what do we need to do? Well, we just talked a little bit ago about what we do for a lost cow. We talked about what we do for a lost child. We talk about the resources we'll implement. I read an interesting story this week online. A link was sent by a friend. In, I want to say, 1998, a family from Germany, July of 1998, a family from Germany was over here visiting the United States. And they had gone to Las Vegas and were on their way back to LA to return their rental van, low-beam minivan, and get it back to the rental people, get on the airplane and fly back to Germany. Trying to see a few more things before they went back, they decided to drive their minivan through Death Valley in July. They started having a little bit of problems, and they decided to take a shortcut in Death Valley in July. Got off on secondary roads, got off the secondary roads, and ended up, actually, you guys have seen roads like this where it's hard to tell the difference between a road and a wash, and actually got to going down a wash instead of the road, and got their minivan stuck in the middle of Death Valley in the middle of July. In October, a park ranger was, I think, flying over this section of Death Valley and spotted their minivan. Landed, checked out the area, obviously no people there, and he knows they've been missing, runs the plates, finds out the car had been reported stolen by the rental company on July 28th. So he knows these people have been in the desert since July 28th. It is now October. At this, they do a brief search, but at this point everyone knows we are no longer looking for people, we are looking for bodies. And the rest of the story was the search for these bodies. And the writer of the story actually found out about this search much later. And in 2006, he and a friend of his went out, and they did 2 more trips. They'd done several, but they did 2 more trips out to the desert. One trip where they went out and they found a spring out there, and they filled up 40 gallons, I think it was, of water from the spring and cached it out close to where they thought the bodies were missing in the desert, so that they could go back later and have the water to be able to search. And after doing these 2 arduous trips out there, they found the lost Germans in 2006. And this story I read documented all of the steps that were taken over the years to find these lost bodies, and how the search continued from that point on to make sure that they found all the kids and the adults, and found them all. Seeking the lost. And the effort that went into that. And so, that passion and that attitude, I was impressed by this guy's passion to look for what at this point was just bones. And he couldn't really do the people he was looking for any good. But if you and I are seeking those who are spiritually lost, we can do them an infinite, literally, an infinite amount of good. Because what we help them with determines where they spend eternity. And so, one of the things I think we've got to do is change our attitude. And I think we need to change our practices. Now notice I don't say our programs. Programs are useful and they're good, but I think one of the things that attracts us about a program is when we run a program, we start it, we do it, and it quits. Let's think about Vacation Bible School, which quite frankly is one of the most effective programs that this church runs. We reach out into our community very well during Vacation Bible School. Tammy does a very good job of planning it. The volunteers that we get do a very good job of participating and coming and putting in a lot of effort. You guys do a very good job of finding the props we need. I mean, it runs very, very well. And kudos to you guys on how our Vacation Bible School works out. But here's the thing about Vacation Bible School when it comes to reaching the lost. First of all, it's 1 week out of the year. Now, Tammy over here, She typically starts on Vacation Bible School, about 2 days after the previous one ends. You know, and plan the next one. So for her, it is kind of a year-round push as she gets the curriculum and all of that. But for most of us, the appeal of Vacation Bible School is we find out from her, we talk to her about what we're going to do that year, and then we don't think about it until about a week ahead of time. And then we show up, you know, if we're doing the Bible study or the song, we might start a little earlier than that. And then we show up and we do our stuff, and then when it's over, we celebrate and we go home. And we don't think about it again until next summer. Or except for when we announce that we still need a chair? Okay, so we've got our stuff, but unless we're announcing what we need for the thing, we don't think about it. That's a program. It's limited in time, it's limited in scope, you know what you're getting into. And that's the attraction of a program. And they're effective and they help us reach the kids. But the program really doesn't work unless there are people there that actually love the kids while they're here. And we've got that going too, to some extent. But when we start to really make seeking the lost part of our personal practices, then Vacation Bible School is just a tool that we use. And this is something that we do year-round, and I think this is one of the reasons why it's hard. Because I've already got, Tammy's provided me with the lesson plans for Vacation Bible School. I know what I'm going to teach, when I'm going to have to teach, what I have to have prepared. There's limits to that. I know how much time it's going to take. I know exactly what I need. And so I know what I'm getting into. The reality is when we as individuals go out to seek and to save the lost, you don't know what you're getting into. How many of you, either as a kid, bugged your parents for a puppy or a kitten, or as a parent, have had your kids bug you for a puppy or a kitten? Have you noticed how our attitude changes? When we're little, we're the ones running around going, "Mom, I want a puppy." And when we're older and we've got 8 cats living in our house, we're the one going around, "Hey, you want a cat? You really need a kitten." Trying to get rid of them, you know? What's the difference in a child's attitude towards cats and kittens and puppies and adults? It's that the child doesn't really know what they're getting into. And the adult knows that they don't know what they're getting into because they don't know what kind of medical problems that cat's going to have that's going to require it to go to the vet. They don't know how much food the thing's going to eat, what kind of budget things that's going to do to their budget. We look at the challenges, and so we're kind of like, yeah, no thanks. And so we are less reluctant to get into that kind of relationship. That's how it is with seeking the lost. When you reach out to try and lead someone to Jesus and help share your faith with them, you don't know what you're getting into. You don't know what demands on your time and your patience and your finances that it's going to require. But you do it. And some people are easy. You know, like some dogs are easy. Or some cats are easy. You bring them home and they train themselves. And they're never any problem. And there's people like that out there. You know, you bring them to church, and the next week there's teaching Sunday school. The week after that, they're the Christian education director, you know, and you're like, wow, where'd this come from? And they do great, and they're fun to have around, and we need them. But then there's some people that are like a dog I had that if you left it unattended for a second, it would eat something. Before I was done with it, it ate 2 entire sleeping bags. It looked like it had snowed in the yard because there were all these little tufts of, you know, fiber fill out there. I don't know why it thought it was tasty. I don't know why it felt like it needed to eat the second one, but it did. And the reality is we've got people in the church that are like that. We reach out to them, and we bring them in, and we lead them to Christ, and they immediately start to eat the sleeping bags. You know what I'm saying? And a business mindset or a world's mindset is we do what? We cut our losses. But Jesus' mindset is we keep seeking the lost. We treat those people with patience. We reach out to them. And there's a good King James word I don't see used very much, long-suffering. And that's really the biblical picture of patience. When it talks about it, love is patient. The real word there is love suffers long. Because being patient isn't fun. It means you suffer, and then you continue in relationship with the person, and you suffer again. And it's a struggle. And so, we've got to change our practices, not as a congregation so much, but as individuals. One of the things that interests me is the way the world is going in seeking the lost and the way the church has gone in seeking the lost. Why do we have Amber Alerts on our cell phones? Actual question, not rhetorical. Why do we have an Amber Alert on our cell phone? So we can what? So we can be aware and help? So we can help find the child. Why don't we leave it to the professionals? Because we're not professionals, and can the professionals do it on their own? No. So we understand when it comes to finding lost kids that this is one area where the professionals cannot do it alone. They need our help. Now, I don't know if you've spent a lot of time dealing with law enforcement and dealing with rescue personnel and dealing with EMTs, but sometimes they really want you to stay out of the way. Because sometimes when we try to help, we cause more problems than we do good. You know, if you're an untrained person and you go to help somebody in an accident, you can really mess them up. You know, moving people that have got broken spines and that kind of stuff. And you'll drive a paramedic through the roof by doing unqualified first aid help. So there are some things that emergency personnel are like, no, please don't help me. But when it comes to finding the lost, this same institution that has kind of an attitude of keep the civilians out of our way, turns around and says what? Help us. Because they recognize that the professionals cannot find the lost as fast as all of us working together can. But what happens in the church? When we want to take a church and we want to find the lost, the big churches do what? They hire an evangelism minister. And they put him in charge of reaching the lost. Smaller churches just hire the preacher or maybe recruit the elders and tell them to find the lost. We can't do it on our own. The pros can't do it. And it's interesting to me that the world recognizes that to find the lost, we've got to get everybody to help. But the church is lagging behind on that. So that's what it means for me. I've got to repent and get busy finding sheep. But the church